Hey there, Steve Johnson with Mentor 555 coming to you from Medellin, Colombia. While I was in Austin, I had a chance to sit down with David Lyne with 7 Custom Homes. He's one of the top custom builders in Central Texas, also one of the top custom builders down at the Texas coast now as well. So we're going to dive in. We're going to get some insight from him, not only from the construction world, but also from the financial world. He has a background. He was with Apple for many, many years as well. So if you're in sales, if you're in construction, I think you're going to learn a lot from this show today. So dive in. If you like what you see, you know what to do. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Enjoy. Mr. David Lyne, welcome to Mentor 555. Great to have you on our show, brother man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. You know, I don't know how you do it. That's why you're on the show. I want to know how you do it.
Do what?
Exactly. How did you go from being with Apple for so long, right, and then becoming a successful builder, a custom builder? And that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to know more about you, right? You're my builder. You're one of the best custom builders in all of Austin, now down at the coast. You're a great dad. You're a fantastic husband from what you tell me.
Amber might have something to say about that.
Amber might have something to say about that, right? But what I really want to understand is how you balance all of this, because you're like the Energizer Bunny, man. Every time that I talk to you, every time I see you, you're in the next gear. You're on to the next one, and I don't know how you do it, right? So let's start with where you're from, who you are, where you went to school. Get me to where you to who you are as not only professionally, but who helped you become the foundation of the man that you are.
So born in Houston, and then moved to Phoenix, Arizona till I was about 14.
Okay.
Moved back to Houston, and then after Houston, did a quick stint at Stephen F. Austin for a year, and then went to Sam Houston State.
How did I not know that you went to SFA for a year?
I've told you before, man. You just forgot.
Maybe we had some drinks.
Yeah.
Most people go to SFA for a year and they don't go anywhere else.
And then, it was a little bit different, but went to SFA for a year, went to Sam Houston, wrapped up at Sam Houston State, moved to Austin in 1999 to work for Dell. And then from Dell, crazy enough, I got recruited away to Trilogy Software, which was awesome because they essentially gave me a signing bonus, which I used to pay off my mom's house at the time.
Okay.
And then from there, Apple recruited me, and this is all in the span of probably 14 months.
And this was the run up. This was the .com
run up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the crazy thing about Apple is that there was nobody talented at Apple. Or there was no one there who was actually working that was super talented at the time. I wouldn't say like talented, but they had a lot of times retaining talent because Dell was becoming so predominantly strong and really just stripping the workforce. So there was a great recruiter. I don't know how they found him or where he wound up. I believe his name was Brad Putnam, really great guy, and brought me in. Did some interviews. Of course, I showed up in a suit and they were wearing shorts, which was really awkward. But for some reason, they offered me the job. And
this is what, 2000?
This is 2000.
Okay.
And really, the only reason I went is that when I was at Dell, they said they would pay for my graduate school. And there's a little backstory to that. I bartended my way through school. I always ran and waited tables and ran and managed bars. And as I was bartending, I became friends with a professor. His name was Dr. Reed. He was a retired colonel from the military and then became a professor in his second career. And he made me promise to finish my MBA. He said, "You're too smart to not go on and get a graduate degree." And I turned around and was wondering who he was talking to. And then I realized it was me. So I kind of made him that promise. Well, at Dell, they tell you that, but then your hours at that time were so crazy and non-consistent that it was impossible. Same thing happened at Trilogy. They said that. Well, Apple said it, and it was actually a better deal. So they paid for my MBA, and I was already in the classes.
Was that St. Ed's?
St. Edward's. Okay. And then wrapped up my MBA while I was at Apple. And then along the way, and I remember it clear as day. I remember Steve Jobs coming out with the iPod. And at the time I had that, remember Diamond Rio? And it was really fantastic. And you had the one that held 16 songs.
Yeah.
And I had
strapped on your arm, right?
Strapped on your arm. And I had the one for 8. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And then he gave us all an iPod. And then, by the time I graduated, I was getting offers from other companies. And, of course, got a bonus at Apple. And I just thought, I'm just going to stick this out. And really the interesting thing about it was the reason I stuck it out was that when Steve Jobs was giving a speech somewhere around 2002, when I was graduating with my MBA, or right around there, somebody in the audience used to do these big town hall meetings and it was really like, I wasn't in the town hall. I was in Austin. So I was watching a live video of the town hall, but we're just going to pretend I was there. But someone in the audience stood up and asked him, you have to go back and remember this. When are we going to do something like the Palm and the BlackBerry? And, when are we going to get there? Of course, could we come out with the iPod? And this was the really most fascinating thing he said. And I want you to think about the year 2002.
Okay.
So he said that at one point in time, there'll be a divergence point between cell phones, between music players, and portable Palm Pilots / Blackberries. And we want to be at that, I said convergence point. We want to be at that convergence point. So the iPhone came out in 2007 and he announced it in 2002. So he was planning before then to be at that convergence point. And I just thought that was really cool. And that's the reason I stuck it out is I was like, I want to play this out and see what it is.
I want to be in this sandbox.
Yeah, I want to see what's going on. And it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life because at the time, a lot of my friends would make fun of me and say, you work for the fruit company. Because, of course, they're all over at Dell, whipping up on Apple. About 07.
When the stock kept doubling.
That's right. About 07, they were like, are you guys hiring? So, I did at Apple, I started out as an inside sales rep, quickly moved to an inside finance manager. We did short-term muni bonds and, which are essentially leases for public education and municipalities.
Okay.
And then moved to a field manager. And then that's where I kind of sat from, I believe, around 03 and on.
Walk me through the muni bonds because I don't. The mainstream public have no idea about that marketplace. And when you talk about Apple, everybody just thinks of, their products, right? But those relationships that you had that you're building with the school districts?
Yes.
Okay, walk me through that. That blows my mind.
Well, what was interesting is that at the time, Apple had two primary sources of all their revenue. One was coming from education and one was coming from consumers. There was absolutely no business. There was, no business, no small business. I mean, very, very little small business. There was some for creative and graphic designers. So in that, they were extremely focused on education. Well, one of the things that happens in education or in any municipality, so any city, state, or local municipality, I've even seen them do it for water towers and for piping, is they can go out for a short-term muni bond. Well, the benefit of someone purchasing that bond is if you purchase the bond, you do not have to pay any tax on it. So, right now, ones that were written a few years ago, not that great, but now they're probably pretty decent to buy a muni bond because if you invest in that muni bond at 5%, and let's say you're a large bank and you just took advantage of the Fed's borrowing capacity where they gave it to you for basically nothing, you could borrow it. What'd they loan it to them at 0.25? 0.25, then put all that money. You could take $1 billion borrowed at 0.25 and then buy one of those bonds or a securitized portfolio of those bonds at around 5%, 4.5%. That's a pretty good return.
And those are performing assets too.
The default rate on those is like 0.0001.
And if you take California out of the equation, they're perfectly.
The ones that default are actually, you can tell what's happening, and you can do in a muni bond what's called a non-appropriations, where you say we don't have any money and there's not supposed to be any repercussions. But that's just like saying I took bankruptcy and there's no repercussions. There are repercussions on your credit forever. But there are some examinations on their the financial reports for that, and when you're looking at the financials, you can tell what situation they're in. So nothing really out of the ordinary. But most of the time for K through 12 and high ed institutions, there was an allocated amount of tech budget that was given, so you could quickly see. And then if you were an astute finance manager like myself for the team that I worked with, where there were some great people, you would actually know exactly how much money they were able or capable of spending, because they were already spending it. You're just trying to get them to go from spending cash purchases to financing it and essentially getting 4 times or 5 times the value.
And y'all worked with school districts all over the country?
I was primarily in charge of Texas, all the way to Florida, up to Maryland, and then back over to Arkansas.
Okay. And how long were you in that division at Apple, and then where did you progress from there?
Well, I was there my entire career.
Okay.
And then what was interesting is around 2007, we had talked about me going out to Cupertino, and my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and so I decided to turn that down and then kind of stuck it out, and which ironically enough, he lived for longer than Steve Jobs did. They both, I believe, were diagnosed around the same time.
Wow.
And the pancreatic cancer isn't even what killed him. So he lived till 14.
Okay.
And but you know, once that happened, I was like, hey, and I think I've told you this before, I didn't really trust stockbrokers. So I was like, I need to start a side gig to make a little extra money.
Right.
And always loved real estate. Read Donald Trump's book and The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, always loved real estate. So along the way, I'd already acquired some real estate holdings, some land off SH 130 and a few other items. And then my old roommate at the time when I first moved up here, you know, coming from Sam Houston, I was like, whoa, the rents are crazy here. So I had roomed with Jeff Gerlach and another gentleman. They were all from the same fraternity as mine, but different chapters. And we had, and that's Jeff and I decided to start 7 Custom Homes, and we did that, right? 7707.
7707. That's,
yeah.
Now, is that why you named it 7 Custom Homes?
No, 7 in the Bible is biblical for complete.
Okay.
And so it was more of a take on that. But more importantly, I'm not, and you know, you asked a question before about awards and everything. I think the biggest award that you can do in construction is actually completing the house and making a customer happy. That is a lot harder than taking a beautiful picture. Those 2 items right there. And that's what we really strive for. And I think that you need to consider that if you name a company after yourself, which I have no problem with people doing that, then how do I create that team atmosphere that makes everyone feel committed to it?
Yeah.
And I believe it was Rockefeller or Carnegie, whenever they were buying whatever they were purchasing from someone, they would go and they'd say, hey, I want to purchase your company. Well, what's the name of this company? It's going to be Stephen Johnson Rockefeller. And then the people would always sell, and later on they would change the name back. Well, the point is that there's a lot of ego in names, and I think a lot of people identify that. And I wanted to create a company, not something that was just me, if that makes sense.
No, it's about the team, right?
Yeah, it's all about the team.
And Jeff's been with you from day one.
Jeff has, and I think we're set in a position, and a lot of people have been with us a long time. You know, I think there's quite a few, including trades and as well as the staff that's on there. But to me, the most important thing is I want everyone to feel like they're contributing and that they're part of it. It's not just me, and I don't need to go and tell everyone how great I am. It's not really me. It's them.
It's the product.
All I'm doing is managing people.
So when you started in 2007, you're still working at Apple, and you retired from Apple a few years ago.
Yes, sir.
Right? But you balanced both of those at a high level, right? How do you do that?
Well, I think that it comes down to a couple things. It's a really good question. But once you learn how to manage people, and one of the biggest things that I see that's a detriment to people is trying to control everything. You can't control everything. You have to trust people to turn over items to them. They're probably going to fail. They're probably not going to do it as good as you are. But that could be a learning experience. The question is, what was the error made from? Was the error made from incompetence, which is a no-no, or was the error made from overconfidence? Overconfidence is something that you can correct. Incompetence is something you can't correct.
Yeah.
So we try and avoid those people. But essentially, one of the ways that I kept my territory strong at Apple was by managing correctly and not trying to control everything. And I think a lot of people think if I touch everything along the way, everyone's going to notice and think how great I am.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if the tools and resources are in front of you and you can delegate things out to people to become more effective at what you're really good at, then you're actually properly managing. That's really what people want to see. So that's what I did at Apple, and that's what I did at 7, was I just tried to manage. And it took a while at 7 to get everything right. I mean, we literally started, and then the market crashed.
The market crashed in 2008. Yeah.
Market crashed, and we made it through. Of course, you and I have done quite a few projects together, but you know, we've got quite a few customers in the pipeline.
A lot of repeat customers.
A lot of repeat customers, which is hard to do. And I think that I know that managing and empowering people to make decisions without getting frustrated them is one of the hardest things to learn. But once you can learn to do that and just accept that people are going to make mistakes along the way, and there's nothing wrong with making mistakes as long as they weren't incompetence.
Well, and to that point, you have people who are great craftsmen, builders, right? You may have someone who's a master builder and they're fantastic at building a home, but they're horrible about managing money.
Absolutely.
How do you balance that?
So what a lot of people don't recognize in construction or in anything where the margins are so low, and the margins aren't extremely high. If your margins are 200 to 300%, or even 100%, you can make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
You can't make a lot of mistakes when your margins drop down below 30%. And for construction, they're probably realistically around 20%, maybe some high-end people around 30. So what you do is you have to set up the right processes and procedures in place. And a lot of people forget, and I like to tell people this about construction, it's not just building. You're building, you're doing finance, you're doing accounting, you're doing sales, and you also have a customer service / relationship piece of it. So what we've built Seven to do is we have selections coordinators that actually work with the designers to make sure that the customers are staying on track. And there's a lot of data that goes back and forth between the suppliers and the designers that a normal customer or maybe even the designer can't translate because it's a supplier we work with. So consider them kind of like the translators / expediters in the process of doing a custom home or even a spec home. Even the specs that we do, which we don't do that many, they still go through our same selections process. In the background as well, you need to have sales, which is a totally different personality than the construction builder type. So you need to have someone performing sales, and they need to kind of bring the people into the pipeline and have that level of confidence. You need to have purchasing, and purchasing is not easy. The same person that does sales cannot do purchasing. The builder does not want to do purchasing. If they wanted to do purchasing, they would have entered a different field career. So to get all those bids put together, you're looking for someone that likes to be in front of their computer, likes to be in front of their desk, and really wants to hammer that out. The builder wants to be outside. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. And then, of course, you've got to piece it all together with the financial component. And remember, that's where I just was kind of started this off at. When you're low margins, you make one mistake on one of these big homes and your margin is completely burned. So you've got to have that expertise in the field, and your finance has to be great. So early on, what I did was I realized, hey, I'm a pretty intelligent guy. I mean, I think I am, but I don't think I am. I mean, you're kind of looking at me strange. But in my mind, with these multi-million-dollar homes, each one of them would take 2 big file cabinets of hanging files just to keep track of the lien waivers, the subcontractor agreements, the purchase orders that were sent out, and all the data on there, change orders, all those other things. So early on, I wrote a software program that I would say has evolved that runs our company and handles all those things. It handles change orders, it handles purchase orders, subcontractor agreements, all communications, lien waiver signatures, everything. And that saves us a tremendous amount of time and helps us stay organized. So at any point in time, anyone on my team can go in, sign a trade up, or a trade can go online and sign up. Then anyone on my team can actually go in and see exactly where we're at on a project, how much we've spent, what the change order exactly was for, what the person bid. And furthermore, the person doing the accounting can actually see, oh, we sent a purchase order out for that. Why am I getting an invoice for X plus that amount? So it really just keeps everything in line to make sure that those margins are protected, and that way you could be successful.
Well, and not having the file cabinets, not having the paper shuffle. I mean, what if you have a disgruntled employee, right? All of your files end up missing. And people there are custom builders out there, the majority of them, I'm sure they're still like that.
Yeah, I think they are. I think Austin's gotten a lot more astute with things, but most certainly this helped me to be a lot more successful in Port Aransas. But more importantly, we've got the schedules on there as well, so we can actually track the progress of each home and push them to be faster. So think of it like we're building a custom product. We've got the whole staff in place to build that, but we're trying to and as many things as we can duplicate or make as easy as possible for somewhat the production range, we're getting there.
Yeah, and I've told people that, when we're, from a banking standpoint, when we're doing draws, when we're vetting out the builders, which ones have their act together and which ones don't when you're pulling back the velvet curtain, right?
Absolutely.
And you're dealing with draw requests. And, to your point, I've always viewed your team as a custom builder with a production builder process.
Yes.
Right. And that's what you were striving for from early on. You recognized the importance for that to be able to grow.
Absolutely. And I think as well that, look, we're not perfect. There's a lot of mistakes that go on in construction. Last year was extremely challenging. We had
supply chain issues,
issues, which everyone seems to have forgotten about all of a sudden.
Right.
But we had supply chain issues. We had labor shortages. We had a lot of things going on. There was a point in time, I think I've told you, where we were getting price increases every 10 days.
Yeah.
We're a fixed cost builder. I'm not cost plus. I'm fixed cost for several reasons. Number one, that's how I'd want my home to be done. I think that's how you like yours to be done. And number two, I believe that it also encourages us to finish the homes in a more timely manner. Well, with that, it was pretty miserable last year because, you're getting price increases every 10 days and you're talking to trades you've been doing business with for 15 years. And they're like, I can't honor anymore. Copper went up, lumber went up, nails went up, or labor's up too high. And this is a price you got 30, 60 days before. And as you know, in the mortgage industry, you and I are writing a loan for someone that takes 60 days just to get the appraisal back at that point in time. And to get the docs closed, you maybe look at 60 to 80 days. By then, all my pricing is no good.
Yeah.
So it was just a horrible kind of time to be in at that point in time. And, unfortunately, it is what it is. But I think we've all made it through it. There was some good with the Fed raising rates.
It helped slow down.
It did. It did. I question where they get their data from now, but whatever.
That's a whole nother story.
A whole nother story.
Cracker Jack
we
box.
do a whole other podcast on that.
Yeah, and to your point, the mortgage interest rates and what the Fed is doing not only affects us from a lending perspective, but also, of course, our clients, but you as well, right? Because your cost basis can vary so differently based off of what the supplier is able to supply or the trades, to that point. And with inflation having done what it's done, what has that done for your trades? Like you mentioned, how much more are they making now?
Quite a bit. I would say that most trades, and that's when that's when the Fed's policy of raising rates is not going to work.
Yeah.
All they can do is stem what they've done. The only way they're going to actually lower wages, because they keep talking about wages going up, is truly if they put us into a recession. And I don't even know if that would work, because the challenge that we face is that the price of food has gone up so much. If, I make this joke all the time, 3 tacos are $10 at Taco Bell. Nobody's going to work for less than 10 an hour. I mean, they're probably going to want closer to 15 because they've got to have funds withheld and everything else.
Yep.
Well, the trades have definitely gone up in pricing, and it's like something I've seen before my entire life. I know very few people that say, hey, I made X this year. Next year, I want to make X minus Y.
Right.
So you'll work 2 jobs to make the same amount, or most overachievers will. And it's the same with these guys. I mean, it's hard work out there. The guys that are doing it are coming here to do it for a reason. And they're hard workers. And when they want to put in a lot of time and they don't want to make less money. So I don't see wages going down.
Or cost of material going down. Right?
Some of the material, it's pretty interesting.
Lumber.
They probably should have investigated that, but whatever. I'm not going to get
that's
details.
another. Hey, trust me, it was like the lumber mafia. During that period of time. I feel like that the mills got together. There had to be some backroom meetings.
I think there was more FBI agents on Twitter than there were looking at that. I mean, we were all wondering how that happened. It was like 500% in
what was that like for you as a builder?
Well, we quickly tuned and turned and made our lumber and trusses into allowances, and everyone understood. But for the homes that we'd signed, that's where the most of the losses came from.
Yeah.
And for it to drop down so rapidly after, only 12 months is pretty odd.
Yeah, it has, right? I mean, okay. And that wasn't so much a supply and demand. I mean, I think we're onto something here. There was something going on with the price
There was
of lumber.
something weird going on, but it's hard to say. If you think about it, I always try and put myself in other shoes. There were some states where we're pretty heavy in the lumber business, so they did stop workers everywhere in some states, and so we could have actually had those issues. I don't know. I think in our business, when we get to where we're at, I always tell people, worry about the things you can control. We couldn't control that, but what we could do is quickly change our contract.
Yeah. Okay.
So we could sit and cry about it and go out of business and tell everyone and scream and jump up and down like children, or we change your contract.
What's the toughest part about being a custom builder in the current environment? What jumps off the page? You're like, man, this is just killing us, even still.
right now, I think there's only one thing that's going on right now. I think it's uncertainty for all of us.
Uncertainty.
And the uncertainty I feel like is coming from the market and the Fed. And, of course, with, we have to pay attention to those items to see the directions that we're heading in. And it's probably the same thing for you. It's uncertainty. We're very cyclical together. Mortgage guys and construction people are cyclical together. So the same things that are there for you are there for us. Uncertainty is definitely something that neither one of us want.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of that right now.
How many projects do you have going right now?
So we have 24 projects going right now. Okay. And then and
two different markets.
Greater Austin and Port Aransas. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we sit at right now. And we'll probably look at another expansion to another city in the next 12 months.
Is that, do we know what city that's going to be?
We do, but we're not telling the podcast.
Will you slide me a note? Where do you see 5 years from now?
That's interesting. I have no desire to sell. I think some people want to sell. That's not really my desire. I'd like to continue to grow it. As I mentioned to you earlier, we built the software and I really feel like it's a market advantage. It tremendously helps us. It goes everywhere from bidding all the way through closing out a home. I'd like to continue to use that as a market advantage and see if there's an opportunity to expand to multiple cities. Because essentially the software enables us to make the software and the procedures, I should say. The people are extremely important too that we have on board, but having the roles for those people. Mm-hmm. But I think our organization has enabled us to keep kind of Austin as our home base for both cities. Mm-hmm. I think we should be able to have more expansion with that and kind of capture that high-end market because I think it's really great for us if you see just the sheer volume of people that we have in Port Aransas that are also customers of us here or know about us from here. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to cover those high-end markets where people would go so that they say, oh, I know that brand. Yep. I know that.
Branding. That's the
Absolutely.
key. Yeah. Well, and to that point, those in our audience that do or don't know, Port Aransas is, the Texas coast, it's hour 30A of Florida, right? And it's still in its infancy, right? Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, the upside there, and you are doing commercial projects there. You're doing, obviously you're building out the community pool area. I mean, talk about that driving force as your head of sales and how you do that and run a company. I have no idea. How are you managing that experience as you're growing into other markets that are exploding markets?
So we have some processes in place, and that is one of the challenges that I have to turn over the customers to members on my team. And sometimes I see emails come across that I know I can't answer because if I do, then I'll become the primary point of contact. But I do have to turn them over to people on the team, and most people that's not a problem at all. I think for most customers, and we do face challenges in expansion, and I'll go into Port A. You face challenges with not knowing the trades, but for most customers, they're fine turning over to somebody else as long as they see delivery. Mm-hmm. If something stalls out, then there's going to be a problem, of course. Mm-hmm. Port Aransas, as you said, really the hurricane changed a lot of things down there because it knocked down a lot of older buildings and changed some items. But there is a really large push there. We're primarily in Cinnamon Shore now. Mm-hmm. We are approved as a builder in Palmilla. We'll be building there shortly. But my kind of motto was to get really good in one neighborhood and then expand out. And I think we've accomplished that. Can we get better? Absolutely. So we're always looking for that way to get better. Mm-hmm. But down there, growth in my mind is 10x. The vacation rental income on these places is phenomenal. I mean, essentially people can have a free beach house covered by the cost of their vacation rentals. Mm-hmm. Now you might have a little bit of money in there, but you know that you've got to spend a year, but the numbers are pretty astronomical for what they're renting for now. Mm-hmm. So, and that's really predicated on bedrooms. And I think you're about to see that when we finish your place up. Yep. It's a phenomenal neighborhood, phenomenal design. I mean, the whole city of Port Aransas is great. They've got great restaurants, great food, lots to do. I don't know if you had a chance to see the beach this past weekend, but totally different than it was 2 years ago.
I didn't even go to the beach. I'm down there for 24 hours, just blowing and going. I felt like we were holding babies and shaking hands, the entire time. Also checking out our home that you and your team are about to finish up. And, speaking on that note, the quality of construction that Seven puts on the ground versus maybe some of your competitors, right? Whether it's in Port A or whether it's here in Austin. When I have a customer who's, who maybe they just bought their lot and they're like, hey, what builders do you work with? I say, hey, this builder's a great builder. This builder's a great builder. And I try not to sound like a homer when I'm talking about 7 custom homes. But let's talk about the importance for you, because you've made it very clear to me, not only in conversations, but also when I see your product, the quality of the construction. And you're going to spend a little more on a 7 custom home normally than what you would with someone else, but you're getting that quality. Why is that so important for you?
Well, I think the whole point is anyone can make a lot of money when the market's up like it was for the past 2 years, not really this year, but the couple years before, by building homes and selling those homes in any condition. People are going to buy them. The market's up. The real thing comes in 10 years from now. What is that house going to look like? So I'm trying to build homes that make it as long as humanly possible, because I want everyone to say, hey, this was our guy. 7 custom homes built this. So we're not cutting corners. We're not cutting corners of the coast. We know what we're doing. We spend a lot of time researching what our waterproofing products are. We spend a lot of time researching what products to use down there. We're using the best trades we can possibly find. The reason I say my price is a little bit higher, I never say I'm the highest. I'm not. I'm not here to sell you a brand experience and try and brand something. I'm here to sell you quality. Yeah. So I always say I'm mid to upper tier. And the reason is we're putting better products in. And one of the big things down at the coast, which is a really good example, and even in Austin, is I always want to have enough money to where if a trade isn't performing, I can remove the trade from the job. And even if I lose money, it doesn't affect the build. So I can bring someone else in. In Port Aransas, this is a big issue. There's a lot of legends in Port Aransas, like legends at the bar. They start at 9 and they wind up at the bar at 2, and they tell the legend of how many homes they built and what they've done that's phenomenal. This happens at everywhere, but for us coming in new, it's hard to cycle through those trades. So we've kind of identified and found the best trades down there, and we're always looking for better. But, I'll stop a house and it might upset the customer, but if I have to stop the house to fix trim work, we have to do it. Yeah. I mean, we absolutely have to do it. And there's different levels of quality that people are used to, and there's certain things that we just can't accept. If the paint is bad, they're going to have to repaint it. I mean, if the trim work is bad, we're going to have to redo that. But key point is, a lot of people don't think about this, but if that foundation is off, every single board is off from the framer. So if you're an inch from one side to the other on a foundation down there that's only 45 feet wide, every board is off to account for that. Then the window guys have to fix it, the trim guys have to fix it, and sooner or later you're going to see it. So it's important to spend those little extra details, laser level, the simple things that people are capable of having, and just get the right trades out there to make sure that the things get done. Will it always be perfect? Absolutely not. One of the problems we have in construction, Stephen, is that we buy products from suppliers and we don't know if we're trusting the supplier is providing us with a product that actually is effective and works. We don't know if that product is going to work. And what I mean is, if someone buys a plumbing fixture or an item, you've heard me before, I always stick with the same kind of brands because I know they're effective. But if somebody buys some, really fancy plumbing fixture and it bursts in the wall, then, who's accountable for that? Yeah. That's got to go back and forth.
Who is accountable for that?
Well, technically the supplier should be, but the supplier is going to blame everyone else. What we like to do is fix it and try and handle it on the back end. But remember, if you're building one house a year, and this is a really important item, what negotiation room do you have with that supplier or with the manufacturer or with anybody to say, no, we know this was you, you're going to fix it.
And how important is it when you're looking at that from a reputation standpoint?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I think we don't really market. I mean, I think for the first time I know
we've talked about, I'm like, David, you're not marketing and you're doing all this business, man. It's crazy.
We don't really market. I will at some point, but the phone has to stop ringing for me to do that. And right now it hasn't done that. And so you're bringing up a really good point is we don't really market. I'm using word of mouth. And I think that,
which is powerful.
It's powerful. And I want them to see our products. Like walk through and look at our product in the coast. We're proud of it. We're proud of what we're building. Yeah. I mean, remember, we don't pick all the colors. You might go in and say, oh, I hate that wallpaper, or I hate that wall color. That's an individual's choice down there. The important thing to remember is look at the quality, look at the trim, feel the doors. I mean, we're putting great products in. Look at the waterproofing solution that we're using on the exterior of the homes. The waterproofing solution that we're using, as I've told you before, those homes will take 5,000 to 10,000 nails predicated on which siding that you use. So I have something that seals around the nails. I mean, it's not going to happen in the 2 years that your cosmetic warranty or even the 10-year of the structural, but a little nail hole leak after that nail rust out, that could cause a big problem in 10 years. We're trying to avoid something later on down the road. And, you know, the structural engineer that we have down there, I ask him all the time, is there anything that we could do differently that you feel like we're not doing? And he says, you're doing everything that I feel like you should be doing. That's what you want to hear.
Yeah. Well, because we know that it's not if a hurricane's going to come through, it's when. We don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're building a product that you feel like is going to stand the test of time. A big storm comes through. The nice thing about Cinnamon Shore and Port Aransas is that we have the break. You know, we have the dunes right there that help protect the community, and some other areas don't have that. And so when Harvey hit, that's what wiped out a lot of the older part of Port Aransas. But really, the homes that were in Cinnamon Shore really, they weren't affected as much as the other areas of the island.
Absolutely. And you're 8 to 11 feet above the flood zone as well. So that helps as well. But yeah, I mean, it's sooner or later, there'll be a storm there. And like you said, you want your products to last. And I think that's the big challenge down there. And, you know, it's easy when the market is really busy like it was to say, hey, we're going to build as many houses as fast as possible. But it's not easy to maintain the same level of quality. Yeah. And to be willing to fire people or take a loss to do it.
And what is it, thinking through that, the quality of your construction is important not only for you, for your customer, but also the developer, right? Let's talk a little bit about developer relations, whether it's at Cinnamon Shore, whether it's at Palmia, whether it's somewhere here in town where you start to get a stronghold as a preferred builder, and you're going to have some, I'm not going to say it's guaranteed business, but you're going to have the opportunity to have business coming in the door because the developer and their sales team believe in you. How important is that for you and Seven?
It's really big. We use the developer's sales agents on the ground to sell for us, so they have to believe in the product that we're selling. And there's really multiple ways you can make someone believe, and that's where the marketing part gets in. Yeah. I could spend $500,000 on commercials and advertisements and show beautiful pictures, but really the point is, can you build the house and will the customer be happy? And will the home not have defects or issues? The third one's really challenging because there's a lot of potential things that can happen, but you always try and get better. And I also think that the more projects that you're doing, the better you get. There's different things that different project managers can teach people. One of the great things down there is they've got me walking the homes. They've got 2 guys on the ground, 2 superintendents. They've got Jeff, the VP of construction, walking the homes as well. Cleanliness is actually a big issue down there. The wind, of course, is big. And so you've got sand that gathers up in the houses, which if you literally let it go for a week, it looks like a sandbox. And then you've got the trash and debris that blows around from that same wind. So that's the bigger challenge in keeping the development team happy. But we've got guys that are going around and cleaning the job sites to do that. But those little things right there, people notice. Developer notices.
And that's important to you. And I want to know, where does that come from you? Like where was it early in life? Who was it that pushed you, that drove you, that was a mentor for you, that helped you become the man that you are, which, what we're talking about right here, the importance of, the team, and the mindset. Where did that come from?
Well, I think there's a lot of different factors as you go through life. That's a really hard one to answer, but the first thing is God. I always throw it God, family, country, and then I love to throw in my wife and my fraternity as well. But those are all items in kind of the order. And if I said it in order, it would be God. You've got to have those principles. Whether your belief is strong or not, you have to have some underlying principles on how you're going to treat other people. And that's kind of the biggest thing that I see. If we try and pay our trades fairly all the time, and that is a belief system that me and my team have, and that I know comes from our belief system in God, which is probably a very horrible thing to talk about these days, but I don't really care. I've set my belief system based upon that, and that's how I treat other people.
And who says it's horrible?
Well, you get a lot of flack nowadays, but that's the belief system that I follow. I treat other people fairly, whether they believe in the same belief system as me or not. I still treat them fairly, and I think that goes a really long way. I don't do to people what I would want if I wouldn't want something done to me. We pay our trades very rapidly, and that's kind of one of the deals there. But the next thing is, it was, of course, your country. Like I love it here. I love our nation. Not that there's not other.
The nation's hurting right now too, though, David.
It is hurting.
There's a lot of divisiveness, in this country. I mean, what just recently happened in Nashville. I mean, we continue to see that. And to your point, this country, how can you not love it? I mean, it's the land of opportunity. We have a lot of work to do, and we need to come together,
Well, that's always easier said than done. There's a lot of people that make a lot of money keeping people apart. Yeah. So they've made a career out of that. Yeah. Most people, if you put them in a room, no matter what their political beliefs are, you're having a beer with them, or you're sitting down and talking, or you're doing some labor or work with them, or playing a golf game with them. Yeah. You find commonality. Yeah. There's people that professionally spend their life trying to keep us from not finding commonality. Yeah. And there's commonality with people all over. And if you can see people for the good in what they do, then you can forgive the bad in what they do. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the things. No, you're never all going to get along. Yeah. Not everyone is alike. If we were all alike, God, we'd be boring.
Well, that's why you have Republicans and Democrats. Yeah. You have to have both sides of the aisle.
And in each one of those parties, there's probably 20 different sub-parties that people don't acknowledge.
No doubt. So, right? Yeah. And so you've got God, which is super important to you.
My family, the family-based values and supporting everything and prepping you up. And then, of course, God, country, family. Mm-hmm. And then I would say one of the great things that really changed me a lot was, going off to college, not really knowing where I was. I joined a fraternity. Mm-hmm. I joined Sigma Chi, and I think that they were a phenomenal fraternity at Sam Houston State University. I really feel like there was a lot of overachievers in there. There's quite a few of them that have done really, really well, some really successful companies. And by having those kind of mentors and seeing them around the right way to behave and treat people and act was a really big foundation at that point in my life. And then seeing them leave, graduate school, and become very successful was something else, because you surround yourself by people who you want to be like. Yeah. And I don't necessarily judge someone's success on monetary gains. Right. And you have to think about this from the perspective, if someone has nothing because they lost it all somehow, maybe drug use, alcoholism, and they're just staying clean, that's a very successful person, because they're accomplishing more. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to always say that. I wish I could tell you that I always hang around with, people that monetarily are successful. There's people that give so much to me that don't have that same mission and goal on the monetary gains that I think you and I are more motivated by. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and to your point.
Wait, I gotta leave. I gotta put one more in.
Oh,
your spouse. My wife is phenomenal. Yeah. She's my biggest fan. Absolutely has been great for me. And, there's nothing better than when you're stuck on something and you have someone to go home and have a great conversation with. So I always tell people that's one of the biggest and best decisions you can make in your life is choosing the right spouse. Yeah. Because, it's just great to hear, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to fix this. Yeah. And instead of, oh my gosh, or whatever. And so Amber has been a phenomenal part of that, and also encouraging you to do better. Mm-hmm. I think I come up with some crazy ideas and she's like, go do it. That's awesome. I mean, not a lot of people say that. So,
well, she's cut from a similar cloth, from a work ethic perspective, from her faith and from family. And it's worth noting that she's one of the top realtors in Austin, has been, year in and year out. What is that like for y'all as a professional couple? How challenging is that? How do you overcome it?
The biggest challenge is that a lot of people don't understand is that we're both really busy, so it's hard to spend time with each other. Mm-hmm. You'll know we take a lot of vacations, like mini vacations, I call them. We'll leave on a Friday and come back on a Monday. We have 3 kids at home, 3 dogs, and then we both have these careers. So I think the biggest toll is that, when you're doing sporting events for kids, as a lot of people are aware of, and then you're also dealing with employees and the employee issues and, their personal problems that you want to be there for. Both of us, and then also, your work, just the general day-to-day operations, it gets kind of hard to spend time with each other. So we have to try and figure out ways to carve that out. I think we both identify that really well, but it's definitely the biggest challenge is just finding time to spend with each other.
You have to be like super intentional with it too, right?
Oh, totally. And then there's, no matter what, that's why we try and leave town. Mm-hmm. No matter what, there's at least 20 people trying to destroy that inadvertently, of course. Yep.
But when y'all go down to the coast, it's a combination of downtime and you're able to see your product. Yeah. Because y'all have a home down at Cinnamon Shore as well, right? And you're able to go down there. And to that point, you have clients, and she has clients that are down there that are, whether they're here in Austin or whether they're going down to the coast for a week, for spring break or what have you. You're always on. Like, how do y'all balance that? You know,
Cabo.
Cabo. Tell us about Cabo.
You know, to me, it's one of the best places. I love fishing, and within, you know, literally, if I drove down to Port Aransas and decided I wanted to go deep sea fishing, it would be 4-hour drive, and then, you know, another 3 to 4 hours on a boat. I can hop on a plane, fly to Cabo, and within an hour and a half, be on a boat, and you're 30 minutes out. You're already dropping lines and catching marlin.
And you have a boat. Tell me about that.
I do. I have a boat. I do have a boat there, and it's a 60-foot Hatteras. Mm-hmm. It's an older Hatteras, but I retrofitted it completely.
Looks great.
Yeah, it's awesome. It looks fantastic. I've got a full-time crew down there, and we charter the boat out, and it's been awesome.
Mm-hmm. And the port of call is Port Aransas, right?
But that has more to do with the fact that I didn't understand what the port of call was about. I didn't realize you could use Lakeway.
Okay.
You can use Lakeway. I probably just need to change that on the Coast Guard forms, but I like Port Aransas, so we'll just leave it on there for now.
What's the name of the boat?
The name of the boat is Lionheart.
Lionheart. Okay. Okay. And is it so these are, you know, fishing trips that someone can book a fishing trip on that? Can they stay the night on it, or
they can? Yeah. You know, there's fishing trips, so there's daily, half days. I mean, the great thing about Cabo is you can go out a half day and catch a ton of fish. Be back by 2 and caught 5, 10 marlin, mahi, or El Dorado, as they say down there. Tons of different fish, and then you can go right there in the marina. They'll grill it up for you at a place called the Tiki Bar. It's best food you've ever had, best deal in town too for Cabo meals. And we do the half day, daily. We do sunset cruises, which are really spectacular.
Yep.
I have the captain's wife will come and make homemade margaritas on the boat.
That's worth going just right there.
Oh yeah. So then you go by the Cabo Arch. The sunsets are absolutely gorgeous because you have that desert sunset.
Yeah.
They'll take you out a little bit, drop a line. If you catch something, it's a double win.
Yep.
And then, you know, of course, serve some nice drinks, and you could just sit back and relax and enjoy everything. It's gorgeous there.
So having that, it's able to pay for itself to some degree.
Yeah.
You know, you have a full-time crew.
Yes.
How many members is that? The captain, the chef?
I've got the chef isn't full-time. You hire the chefs in, but I've got a captain and then 2 mates.
Okay.
So they keep the boat clean all the time. I mean, there's a lot of things. Anytime you have a boat or anything like that, there's a lot of issues and maintenance stuff. So they do primarily most of that, and the stuff they can't do, then we have done. But right now, it covers itself and then some.
Do you see your team? Maybe I shouldn't ask this since you said you're going to go into another market. But do you see yourself building in Cabo anytime in the future?
Boy, that would be crazy.
How's your Spanish, right?
Bueno.
Bueno. So when you have all of this going on, David, tell me how it is with the kids. What's that like from a parenting perspective? How are you balancing that?
You know, the kids are phenomenal. So
what are their ages, by the way?
So we have 16, 13, and 7.
Okay.
So somehow we've managed to cover high school, middle school, and elementary school.
3 schools at the same time.
But, you know, our oldest, Gracie, she's extremely independent, really phenomenal, extremely mature. So she's super easy.
Yeah.
And Torsten's pretty easy as well. Great. They're great athletes. Gracie's, of course, a professional dancer. Mm-hmm. Torsten plays almost every sport you can get in front of him. But I think early on we kind of created that foundation of you know, I mean, they kind of have to fend for themselves a little bit.
Yep. So that's kind of where I was going with this.
Yeah, I'm real big on making them, and some people might not agree with this, but I don't really care. So they have to pack their own bags. They have to pack their own sports bags when they start off early. And the reason is because isn't that just part of life?
Yeah.
Like no one cares if you forgot your briefcase or your laptop. Like that's something you need to get used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things I could say is that, you know, they listen. And you know, I told Torsten, he had multiple backpacks. I said, you have one backpack, have your charger in there, have a toothbrush in there, have anything you possibly need. Now he does it. Life becomes easier once you like compartmentalize those things.
Yeah.
And you know, that goes to kind of some of the discussions with the company as well. If you can compartmentalize things and make them a little bit easier by performing the same routines, then things get better. I mean, if you think about it, Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day. He did that for a reason.
Right.
He was saving time.
He's saving time,
He's
right?
saving time. And he's like, I know what shoes are comfortable and what jeans are comfortable and what shirts are comfortable, and that's what I'm going to wear.
What would you say, speaking of that, what would you say the big takeaway was for you when you left Apple and now that it's in the rearview mirror, to me, it just seemed like your business just took off from there. Do you wish that you had done it sooner?
I don't know. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I think the
It
shoulda,
happens
coulda, woulda.
exactly the way it's supposed to.
Shoulda, coulda, wouldas are hard. But I think if I did do it sooner, the business would have taken off even more. But we weren't doing so shabby before.
No.
You know, it just, construction's a tough business.
Yeah.
And you have to get to a certain level. And remember, I funded this with my own money to get to that level. And, you know, for the most part, none of the money's coming out. We've reinvested it back into new projects and different items. We have very few investors, only a couple select people that we'll work with. And I think that, you know, I don't know that I'd change any of it. I'm pretty happy with how everything's gone.
Do you feel like that the technology piece of your business of 7 Custom, that you owe anything to Apple on what you learned from them from a technology standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Apple was a phenomenal place. I learned management skills there. I learned people skills there. I learned technology items. I mean, it was everything I have. I attribute to luckily getting that job, and you know, a lot of things that happen in all of our lives. A little bit of it's luck, and you know, a lot of it's hard work. But you still have to be put in front of the right people, and that was a very fortunate turn of events for me. And if the funds from Apple I used to buy apartment complexes and property and land and different items like that. So absolutely, everything comes from there.
Luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So you talk about your fraternity being really important for you, and myself having been in a fraternity, you know, those relationships last a lifetime.
Absolutely.
You know, so talk a little bit about it's like a brotherhood. So tell me a little bit about how that has affected you and some of your decisions, some of your relationships that you have with them. And you mentioned several of them have done well in business as well.
Yeah, I think the good majority of them have done really well.
Yeah.
So it's to each person, it's what they want to do. Some people want to be the best father. Some people want to coach their kids to do, you know, sports, and we've got quite a few of those. I mean, there's some interesting stuff that's gone on with a lot of my fraternity brothers, and you know, Wigman, the starting quarterback for A&M, his dad was one of our fraternity brothers, a little bit older than me, and then I believe I saw an offer go to Grant Smith. From A&M to be the next quarterback. His dad was one of our fraternity brothers.
So you're starting to see that cycle come through, right?
Absolutely.
Where your buddies have their kids and you follow them, you follow the kids, you know, as they're coming up through the ranks.
Absolutely. There's a large group of, you know, I won't go into details, but there's a very large group that have done really well. And I think having those guys around when I was younger and hearing, hey, don't do that, do this, or here's why, or just advice, you know, like, you know, one of the best advice I heard was from a gentleman named Trey Banks one time, and he said, don't get even, get ahead. I mean, when you're 18 years old or 19 years old, you always think, I'm going to get even, I'm going to get back at somebody. But he said that, and it was very profound, and I remember it still to this day. So still to this day, I always, whenever someone upsets me, I'm like, I'm not going to get even, I'm going to get ahead of them. Yeah. And I think that's a really big, mature way to look at things. Yeah, it's a total mindset. But those guys kind of started that foundation, and I can't give them full credit. You have to have a willing participant, but I give them a lot of credit because my mind was so early at the time in training, and I think you could probably go in and say the same things. And like you said, you create lifetime friendships and relationships with people that are pretty phenomenal and and you progress together. I think you push each other when you're down and to get back up. And it's nice to know that you've got that strong group of friends that even if one of them isn't, you know, on your same level now, you still feel when you see them like, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you because they were such a big part of your life.
They're inspirational, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are guys that have your back, right? So what female in your life has been your biggest inspiration besides your wife? And your mom. Well, like who is it? Who is it that you can look back on and go, hey, because you're really I can tell you're strong. You have high character. Where does that come from? You know, is it somebody that was directed in your family? Is there someone in college? Who was it?
Well, of course your family is such a big part of it. Yeah. My mom, my brother, my sister, like they're all a part of this. Yeah. I mean, everyone is. It's not. I can never attribute anything to one person. I can attribute it to like a grouping of people that have come along the way. And I fortunately have met a lot of great people along the way who've had lasting impressions. I mean, from bosses, from coworkers, fraternity brothers, Of course, my wife, my mom, my sister, my brother, my aunts, my uncles. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have been extremely, and you know, people don't realize it, and that's why you have to be careful what you say. But small things people do and say mean a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, people sitting on the outside watching keep track of those things, and it could really motivate or crush somebody. So,
and you're from the greater Houston area, right?
yes, sir.
Okay. And your family's all still down there?
My family is actually all
Your
dispersed.
your
My mom
father
recently
has
passed away. My father passed away. My sister just moved back to Rhode Island, and she actually does the HR for my company.
Your sister does your HR?
Yep, she's brilliant.
Okay. Yeah.
And then my brother lives in Dallas.
Okay.
And he does sales, and he's probably one of the best salespeople I've ever met. Rob will talk to anybody about anything for a countless amount of time. Like, he's absolutely amazing at sales.
Yeah.
And a hard worker. That's one thing I think our family all has, is we're all really hard workers. There's a lot of that in us. And, you know, those are kind of the two siblings. My brother has a son. He's in Houston. And then my sister has just got 3 dogs.
And so you get your drive, David. That's what I want. I guess that's where I'm trying to go with this is, where does that drive and that spirit come from? And what I'm hearing you say, it's not just one individual. It's the community.
It's not. And I think one of the things that people make a lot of mistakes on is, I remember being younger. So I found Audible early on. You know, the sole reason I'm into computers is that I'm kind of dyslexic. So I used to go in the computer lab, and I can memorize things, but it would show me what I spelled wrong, and then I'd click on it and redo it. And I've got some great stories to go with that. But my freshman year at Sam Houston, or I guess it was my sophomore year because I spent another year, I turned in a typed paper, and the teacher said, what are you going to do? You can't turn in a typed paper. I said, why not? And she said, well, what are you going to do in business? And you need to write a note. And I said, my secretary's going to do it. And I didn't mean it rude, but the whole class died laughing, and she was really pissed, so I dropped. But I didn't mean it rude, but it was just a weakness. So ironically enough, I learned to use computers before anybody else because of a weakness that I had. And then I turned that into my first job. Like, I knew everything about computers. When Dell hired me, they were like, oh, wow, look at this guy. I mean, instead of a car, I bought a compact computer with my extra money that I'd saved up working every summer so that I could write my papers on a computer and print it up to get yelled at by an English teacher who didn't realize computers were going to overtake the world. But my point on that is that I also went to early on to listening to books. I was using Audible or audiobooks that I would purchase, and then I found Audible, and I would literally put them on my laptop at the time, which weighed about 90 pounds, put it next to me in the car and play it while I drove on trips. So I read a lot of books about business, real estate investment, being a better person, and different books like that over the years. Like, I don't know what it is, but I think I hit, 2 to 4 books a month. So,
well, and that's how I read my books now as well. Because when we're traveling, which we both travel a lot, and you can listen to those books at 2x, 2.5x, and you can power through a great book in 3 or 4 hours. Yeah. Whereas if I'm trying to read 2-3 pages in, I almost kind of want to I fall asleep sometimes.
Totally.
Yeah. So did you have this dyslexia, or were you diagnosed with it, or you just kind of recognized it?
I don't think they diagnosed back then. They just said you were really shitty in English.
You're great in math.
And I was great in math. And, but I don't think they really looked at it like that. And I wouldn't say it was major. I'd say it was probably a mild form. But it is what it is. I think those unique differences are what make us phenomenal.
Well, and what you do is you have other areas that you excel in to help compensate for that, right?
Totally.
And our son, Sebastian, when they said that they thought that he may have dyslexia, then they said it was maybe dysgraphia, and we'll see what that looks like. Well, I think what it ended up is he's learning 2 languages at the same time. He's reading 2 different languages at the same time as well.
Yeah, and remember, I before E and E before I are 2 different in English and Latin.
Yeah, they are.
I blame that for a big part of my confusion because they were teaching me Spanish when I was young too. So, but yeah, that's a very confusing part of it. And but who is anyone to say that anyone has something wrong with them?
Right.
I mean,
right. It's a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow in other areas.
Yeah, I just think that you have to spend a little more time on things than other people do on that. But how is that any different than somebody who's training to become a professional weightlifter or someone who's training to become a professional athlete? They spend a lot more time than other people. People say, oh, you're born with that. Absolutely incorrect. It's training. They work their tails off.
It's like your jujitsu.
Yeah.
I mean, are you a badass at jujitsu because you had that talent? No. I mean, how many hours have you spent in the gym, training for jujitsu?
Oh, I have no idea, but a lot, because it was like 10 years to get a purple belt. But yeah, no, because there's always someone better than you. But but the point is that people spend a lot of time on things, and I just think that we're each different. Like if you think about someone who might be born with a club foot, they have to work a little bit harder than people do at walking to make that limp go away. So dyslexia can be viewed as the same thing. I think the worst thing we have is when people try and tell people, oh, you've got this big problem. It's not really a problem. It's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity. Yeah. Well, you've clearly taken, those opportunities, as you've progressed from Apple to 7 Custom. And, I think that the sky's the limit for you and your team with where you are and with your systems that you have in place. Do you feel like that you're going to, the system that you have right now, is that a proprietary system? Is it something that you feel like that you can market to other builders, to other custom builders?
It could be marketed to other custom builders, but you get into this deal where, number one, it's definitely a market advantage for us. It's pretty phenomenal.
Okay.
And we're consistently improving it. I've got a full-time team of developers that work on it and improve it at all times. And you get into this thing where what happens if I leave 7 to go and try and pursue this other opportunity? So the point is, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes more sense for me financially to stay where I'm needed most at this point in time and continue to grow it. Maybe we'll pursue that later on down the road, but I feel like if we can use it as a market opportunity to expand, we should.
Yeah. Clearly you sitting on your hands is not something that you're very good at.
No, I think, it's funny. You stay out of trouble when you're busy.
Okay.
So the busier you can stay, the less trouble you'll get in. I mean, I really firmly believe that. And I tell employees that we get that had past substance abuse issues, stay busy, stay working.
Yeah.
You keep people busy, you keep them. Idle minds are not necessarily a great thing.
No.
So, and I think if you keep people really, really busy, there is nothing wrong with a day of hard work.
Yeah. Well, you are far from an idle mind, my friend. And I've admired you from up close because we've built, a few homes together now, and we're about to wrap up one. You're building our house in Austin. It's coming together, and it's very clear to me that your team loves working for you and for 7. And it's going to be fun to see how this all comes together, especially down at the coast. We've just got so much runway in front of us.
Yeah, and we've got our first development. I think I told you about this. It's wrapping up in Lakeway. So, we have one of the things you run into in Austin is lot inventory. And I partnered with previous developers before to have lot availability and inventory, which is really just what we need. I can sell once we have that.
Yeah.
And we were kind of running out, so I did my own development over between Serene Hills neighborhood and Rough Hollow, and it's going to be 46 acres, 24 acre plus lots.
So
1.76 tax rate, which is phenomenal.
Which is incredible because we know that that's not the case in Serene or Rough Hollow.
Yeah,
they're up closer to 3.
Yeah, closer to 3.
Yeah. So why is that tax rate? Because you don't have the utilities and the mud that
I didn't do a mud. So yeah, I could have. We could have made it higher, but I my point is, I always try. I'm trying to build something where I would live.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make neighborhoods where I would live for other people, and I think it's pretty phenomenal when you can keep the other bills low and you're just worried about the house payment instead of, having a $2,000 sewer bill and $2,000 water bill or huge tax bills.
What advice would you give, knowing what you know now, if there was a young, struggling custom builder, or he's a GC and he has aspirations to be sitting where you are with the business and with the opportunities that you have in front of you? What's some advice that you would give them in the current market looking forward?
Start a podcast business. You don't want to compete against me.
Right. Don't compete against me.
No, I think I've told you this before, but there's probably, I don't know, 1 million people that can build phenomenal homes, that have the capability to build a phenomenal home in the United States.
Yeah.
Maybe that number's high. Who cares? Whatever, 500, 1 million. But of those, it probably drops down into the percentage of those, like who can actually do the accounting and the bookkeeping. And I think that anyone starting out, they need to figure that out, because that'll be the death of them.
Yeah.
And that's why you hear this robbing Peter to pay Paul and all these different things like that. That'll be the death of them. And this is a tough business. You have a lot of weird things that go on.
There are a lot of alphas.
Yeah. There's a lot of alphas. And, anyone can do it. You just have to have the right tools in place, but you really need to think about how you're going to map that out.
Because as they say, anyone can be a builder, but very few can be a successful builder.
Yeah, it is. It's very challenging. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. You have to do draws. You have to stay on top of a lot of things. You have to be very careful about the contract. You have to be careful about how the draw request forms look. You've seen me do that with you before, where I demand the bank use mine and then I have to pitch a little temper tantrum. But the reason is because if you let the banks, like let's say you get 10 projects with 10 different banks, they'll send you 10 different draw request forms. Then it's a full-time job just sending out draws to get paid. You don't want that. So you've really got to look at everything from the outside. So it's definitely more challenging, I think most people think. It's probably one of the harder career paths to take.
Well, and it's, to that point, a lot of builders have big egos.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways you have to, right? Because you're running a team, and you have a product that's going up, and you only have one opportunity to get that house right.
Yeah.
Right. But the business sense is really the takeaway, right? And you may love being a builder, but you may not be the best. You may not be the best.
If you hate business, find a partner that loves business to partner with you.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And we talked about this earlier. Know where your weaknesses are. Know where your strengths are. And bringing on a partner sometimes is the best thing that someone could do.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably the best advice I can give on that. But
yeah,
without getting too proprietary.
We don't want to get too proprietary today. Well, it's been awesome having you on, David, and I appreciate you sharing, some of your thoughts, some of your philosophies, and really just seeing the way that Seven has, the success that you've had with it, and seeing where it is and where it's going. Having you on the show today was important for me.
And you're a big help to that, man. We love our references, and you give us quite a few. So
and I love selling. That's the thing, I love selling Seven because I'm not selling it. I'm speaking the gospel. It's like, these guys do it the right way. Their team is amazing. Look at the product. And, I could work with any builder. And I could clearly have worked with, some of my other friends that are great builders.
And it's funny because I hear you sometimes when I'm like, it's all right, we're probably not the right fit. And I hear you in your voice saying, be more aggressive and go get this guy. But I'm telling you, it's okay. Yeah. Because we're not... This is a relationship, and some people might not want to be married to me for 12 months or 14 months.
Yeah.
But I think the money always gets a lot of people, but they don't realize I'm not charging higher margins. I'm just putting in better products.
And better products cost a little more.
They cost more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do hear that in your voice sometimes when you
like,
recommend.
David, come on, man.
Go get them. I'm like, no, we're
right
good.
There. They're
We're
right
good.
there. You just need to close them.
Yeah.
Well, and that's in the fact that you still do all of your own sales.
Yeah.
And then you do everything else that you have going on. Are you going to bring somebody on at some point?
At some point, but I think right now I'm not really a pushy, hard sales guy. And sometimes people need to hear that. You've had some of my past clients that went in another direction. What do they say all the time?
Yeah. He didn't try to close me. Yeah.
But what do they say else? What else do they say? They wish.
Oh, yeah. They say, I had one tell me the other day. And I told you, I wish I'd used David. Wish I'd gone with Seven. And we have one that we both are aware of that last week they chose to go with a different builder.
Yeah.
And he even told me, he said, you know what? I know I should go with David, but I'm going to go with this other one because of X, Y, and Z. And I was trying to, make sure that they understand that the value was there, but
if I was in a different market, the marketplace we were talking about, I don't want to get into too much details, but we're busy.
Yeah.
And if it was not that busy, I would have pursued it more.
Yeah.
But the truth is, nobody's going to do it as fast as I am right there in that market at this point in time. Like we literally closed on a house and had a foundation in 30 days. So
And it has to do with your systems.
it
right?
does, and the right trades.
And the right trades, yeah.
And like I said, you have to have the money in the budget to be able to terminate a trade. Know you're probably going to lose 20, 30, 40K, which makes you sick, to move on, to do the right thing for the customer.
Yeah.
And that is a really hard thing to stomach. But if you've got it priced in and you know you're going to have those losses, then it is what it is.
It is what it is. Well, man, it is what it is. And I appreciate you coming on the show today, bro.
Thanks, man. Always good to see you, brother.
Yeah, I love you, man.
Thank you.
All right.